Good morning. Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Let's talk about land navigation stories. Enough of y'all said, tell us the story. The spider and stick story. So I will do so. I was actually thinking about this while I was feeding the ducks, the guineas, and the chickens. I think I could write a small book on stories about land navigation. It's an important thing in the life of certain types of soldiers and Marines. I came into the military and started out as an infantryman. And infantrymen are the guys who typically walk. Now I know, you got to understand, I'm old, right? I came in the mid-'80s. I know a lot of infantrymen ride today, although they're still doing quite a bit of walking. That's what you do when you're in the infantry. You carry heavy rucksacks and you walk to the enemy. Well, to do that, you have to land navigate, which is moving across country with the use of navigational aids, which consisted of when in the period I'm talking about, which is like mid-'80s to late 80s, early 90s, map and compass, right? Paper map, compass. Now I know we use other things now, but you go into the infantry and they teach you how to use a map and compass so that when you go into your unit and they say, you know, the objective is 8 kilometers. Actually, they never do that in the infantry. It's like 3 kilometers that way or something back then, which, you know, a mile and a half. Go that way and attack it. You can find your way through the woods. And in the infantry, the way they taught us to land navigate, you sit through about, I don't know, a week or so of classroom, and you do this in ROTC too. Once a year we would do land navigation training when I was in ROTC. But then you get in, I went to the Officer Basic Course for Infantrymen, IOBC, and you spend about a week in a classroom and they teach you how to read maps and use compasses and stuff like that. And then you go to the field and they give you a couple really short practice courses, and then what they basically do is you're on a road like this in the middle of the woods. And all down the road, every 10 meters, is a steel post in the ground. And on that post, on Yankee Road, is letters. A, B, C, D, all the way up. And then it goes like A, A, B, B, C, C. All down this road, about every 10 meters apart. And then over there, I don't know, it was about, as I recall, man, it really just wasn't that far. The infantry was so much different than special forces. I'm telling you this to get you set up for the actual story. Maybe 500, 600 yards away was a road called Furman Road. And along that road were stakes every 10 meters that had numbers on them. And then in the middle in the woods, scattered here and there, were other stakes with letter number combinations or something on them. And so you basically had to start, you would get directions and it would say start at point Delta. So you go to the D post, you stand there and it says shoot an azimuth of, I'm just totally making this up, 284 degrees for 600 meters. What point do you get to? And you would get to a point in the middle of the woods somewhere and you would write it down. And then it would say shoot an azimuth from this point to so many meters. And so what they taught you to do was look at your compass, line up the azimuth you wanted to go on, and do what's called a pace count so you know how far you're going. And basically you would run back and forth and through the middle during the day, and then you'd take a break, and at night you would just go from the one road to the other road, from the other road back, basically is what you would do at night. There were no intermediate points. And that was the extent of land navigation, which for the average civilian is pretty extensive. And then, so I did that, I did well. And then I went into saw another tree fell. That's where I cut my tree down yesterday, and we had a really big storm last night, and it looks like a little skinny tree fell across the road. That was not there when I left yesterday. Anyway, then I went to my unit, and I was a infantry rifle platoon leader, which is basically you're in charge of 30-some guys. And we ran through the woods hither and yon, and I was probably definitely the best land navigator in my platoon. And then I had a few other jobs, and I ended up being the battalion scout platoon leader, reconnaissance. And we went everywhere. And we would go far and fast using map and compass. And I was the best land navigator in my battalion. I had no doubt about it. I was better than everybody. I was very good at it. And so then back in the day, Special Forces was not its own separate entity. It was something you also did. And so if you were an infantry officer like I was, you would go do Special Forces for like 3 years, and then you'd come back and do infantry things, and then go back and do Special Forces. And it was back and forth like that until right before it was time for me to join Special Forces. And they made it a branch, its own separate entity. And so I left the infantry. Well, I was going to leave the infantry and go to Special Forces, but first I had to go to what was called the Infantry Officer Advance Course. And that was, good girl, Suka. That was for teaching infantry officers how to be infantry captains. Okay, and as part of that, we did land navigation training. Again, the same way I just told you about, the same way you did it as second step. Oh, and then I went to Ranger School before that, though. And in Ranger School, you do a little bit more advanced land navigation, and actually you run the same course, Yankee Furman Road, again. I've done that course many times. And so, fast forward, I'm at the advanced course, which I think was about a 6-month course. And in that course, there was a handful of guys, infantry, officers, learning how to be infantry captains, who had been in Special Forces in one form or another. Most of them had been sergeants, NCOs, and they had gone to OCS, and now they were officers. And so, ooh, spider web. And so I took the opportunity to pick their brains about this thing that I wanted to do, Special Forces, because I hadn't gone yet. I was going to go right after the Infantry Officer Advanced course. And so there was this one guy. He was amazing. He was old, because he'd already been a sergeant for, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years before he became an officer. So he was like 6 or 7 years older than everybody. And we went to dutifully do our land navigation course, where you go from the one road to the other. And in the infantry, everything is this. Again, I'm dating myself. This was back in the 80s. It could be very different now. But in the infantry, everything had to be just so. And your uniform, you wore these suspenders and this combat belt with your canteens and ammo pouches, and it had to be buckled, and your uniform always had to look good, even in the field, even when you're all dirty because you're an officer, all that stuff. And we get out there on this course, and we're doing it. And at one point, and for land navigation, you just wore a soft hat, right? You have a compass, you have your LCE, you have a rifle. We didn't have rucksacks. And this guy shows up, this SF guy, former SF, and he's got a rucksack. It's like, that's crazy. Who does land navigation with a rucksack? And I'm like, what are you doing? What do you got in your ruck? He goes, it's just my snivel gear. And, that's when I first started learning. This is very good for the story that's coming. Can you see that? Ooh, look at that guy go. Ooh. I'm going to make this story too long. I'm going to bore you guys. He carried a lot of like a thermos and a whoopee, and it's just comfort stuff. And so halfway through this course, and you're not allowed to help each other or talk to each other really. I'm walking down this road to go to my next stake that I've got to start my next leg of my journey on. And here he comes. This guy, and I remember we're all kind of dressed, looking pretty good. His LCE is on, that's the combat harness. It's open, it's flopping all over the place. His shirt, his BDU shirt, you know, the camouflage shirt, is tied around his waist. He just has a t-shirt on. His pants are untucked from his boots, and he's got them cuffed up to right below his knees. He's got a bandana around his head. He's got his rifle in his hand. His compass is nowhere to be seen. And he's running down the road. Running! You don't run, you pace count. You walk, you look at your azimuth and you check. You don't even have a compass. He's got one, he just doesn't have it in his hand. And he's running. I said, "Are you okay?" He goes, "Oh yeah, man, I'm on my last point." And I was like half done. And he's on his last point. And I'm thinking, man, how do you do that? And so we got to talking later on that evening while we're waiting on the trucks to come. And he told me that when I went to the Q course, that's the Special Forces qualification course, they were going to teach me how to do real land navigation. And I said, "Dude, I'm not trying to brag, but I was probably the best land navigator in my battalion." It's like, I don't know, 500 or 600 guys. He goes, "Yeah, I know. I was too." That's what he said. He goes, "They're going to make you better." I didn't believe him. I really didn't believe him. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's just a whole different thing. So fast forward, I don't know, a year. I'm in the Q course now, and we're doing land navigation. Well, when you do land navigation in Special Forces, in one way, it's very gentlemanly. They did the classroom portion, because not everybody who comes into Special Forces started out as an infantryman. So they got to start everybody from the basics. So they do the classroom portion, then we go to the field to learn land navigation. Now in the infantry, when you went to the field, it was never fun. Everything's got to be tactical, man. We got to pull security. We got to stay camouflaged. We got to look good in the field and dun 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 dun. In SF, we were going to the field mainly because it made sense, so we didn't have to ride the truck out to the training area every day. And so what we did is we went out to the field, we set up a base camp, which was basically, all right, y'all set up your hooches wherever you want. We got chow coming in 2 hours, and then we'll have formation an hour after that. And so basically the way it went is for a week, we did a day navigation course. We'd come back, we'd eat dinner. Nobody's hassling you. And then we would go out and do a night land navigation course that took a good part of the night. And then we'd come back and sleep late. Didn't have to get up early. And do it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And when we did land navigation, you know, I remember in the infantry, we never did it with rucksacks on. Man, we had like 60, 70 pound rucksacks on. Now I understood my friend who just had like a 15-pound rucksack of goodies in it. It was nothing to him. We had huge rucks. And we walked far through this stuff. When I say far, I'm talking miles to a point. And then miles to a point. And then miles to a point. These things weren't on our road. Are you kidding me? You're walking through that, right? And so the first day, I'm loving it, man, because it's just such a gentleman's course. No one's yelling at you. No one's being a jerk. It's just like, hey, here's your course. Go do it. And so I'm out there rucking, and I'm going through this stuff. And, you know, you move pretty fast. You're dun, 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 dun. And I'm not going to go into all the techniques here that they teach you, but they do teach you a whole boatload of techniques to use that are so much better than what they teach in the infantry. And so I'm just racking through the woods. And then comes night land navigation. You're not allowed to use flashlights. You don't have night vision. So it's dark. I mean, you know, you're going through that in the pitch black. And that first night, man, I kept hitting these spider webs right in the face. And you're like, and you keep going, right? Because you got to cover a lot of distance, and there is a time limit. And so you're moving. And I keep hitting them, and, you know, every now and then you'll run into like a briar patch or something like that, and you work your way around it. And but man, I keep getting these spider webs right in the face. Boom! And I'm like, and they're hanging off your hat and kind of get them off. So, and I'm thinking, man, I do not remember seeing all these darn spider webs when we were doing the day portion, you know, a couple hours ago. They must come out in the late afternoon and spin these webs. So I go back, and then the next day, get up, do it again. I'm out land navigating, and I'm looking for these spider webs, like the one I just walked through. And there's a spider crawling there. Wasn't that gross? That spider crawling all over me while I was filming, and I didn't even know it. All right. Oh no, I see the spider webs. They're all over the darn place. And it was just that my subconscious, when I was walking through the woods the day before, and I'd see this spider web right here, I would just go around it.